I'm just gonna come right out and say this, I like The Sopranos. Not that this is something to be ashamed of, but it's very important to me to try and say something new in these videos, you know? And the unfortunate reality is, what might be my favorite show to talk about also happens to be one of the most widely renowned, overanalyzed, and hyper-discussed dramas in the history of television.
Bring on though.
One of the things I love about the show is that even after all these years, there are still pages upon pages of analysis being written or recorded about any given episode, to the point where you can lose an afternoon just poring over all the meaning people have ascribed to a 15-second exchange between two characters at a urinal, including a portion of this video. And I promise I'll talk about something weird again soon, but for the next few episodes, this is what we're going over, and what better place to start than at the end? Who killed Tony Soprano? Oh, spoilers, Tony dies in the last episode. This has been pretty extensively covered elsewhere over the past decade and a half, but briefly, if you look at the camera work in those final moments, after Journey starts playing, there's a distinct pattern that goes like this. Tony is in the shot and the door rings. We see his face as he looks up, then we get a shot from Tony's perspective of somebody coming through the door. As each member of the Soprano family arrives, with the exception of Meadow, who's having trouble parking, we get a look around the diner, and in particular spend a lot of time on this man here in the members only jacket. The members only guy, or Mog as he's known by fans, is last seen walking into the bathroom directly to Tony's right in a very deliberately framed shot that David Chase himself has said invites comparisons to the scene in Godfather where Michael kills Salazzo and McCluskey. Meadow runs up to the door, we hear the ring, Tony looks up, and then it's the now infamous cut to black. We're still with Tony's perspective, but there's nothing left for him to see because he's dead. Mog shoots him in the side of the head, severing the circuit between observer and observed and bringing the Sopranos to an end. That final scene in Halston's already has a decent claim on being the most hyper-analyzed sequence in the history of television, so that's not really what we're here for. What I want to explore today is who had Tony killed and why they did it, because I think the answers to these questions are there as well, and the clues go farther back than you might think. But the TLDW version, it's Patsy. And Paulie. It's Paulie and Patsy. Patsy's motivations for wanting Tony dead should be fairly obvious, though I do think there's something specific that moved him to act when he did. But Paulie? This is something the show has been quietly alluding to as far back as Funhouse, Tony's first big dream episode, and really one of my favorites. All throughout the second season, we're seeing this inevitable conflict between Tony and Richie Aprile being built up, only for the latter to be unceremoniously killed in domestic violence before anyone could make a move in the penultimate episode. Then the season finale begins on this all's well that ends well tone that's abruptly shattered when Tony's subconscious finally brings him into violent confrontation with what we've all known for some time.
You know I've been working with the government, right, Tone? These guys, on either side of me, they're asleep.
Don't say that.
Before the revelation about Puss, Dream Tony has a series of strange, esoteric encounters with his crew on the New Jersey boardwalk.
By the way, Patsy, coat went over big. She loved it.
I'm Philly.
Sorry, right, Philly. Yeah. Thought you were your brother. You know, I just put a sable off him. I'm sorry I had to do that. Somebody's looking for me.
Who?
I don't know.
Our true enemy has yet to reveal himself.
Eventually, he comes up on a pair of those rental binoculars you used to stick the quarter in to get a better view of the horizon, and when he looks through them, this is what he sees.
Taking it down.
Tony sees this play out from so far away because his subconscious is trying to warn him about distant threats with Paulie down the line. The announcements of arrivals and departures references the airline ticket he gave his mother, as well as how he sees the beginning and end of his own life. Again and again, Paulie would betray and undermine Tony throughout the years, even going so far as to scheme with Johnny Sack to usurp him.
No matter what happens now or in the future, Carmine won't forget you.
I'm only trying to bring good relations between the families, as I always do and always will, no matter what happens or who's in charge. If it's me, God forbid, or whoever.
It's only after he confronts Carmine in person and realizes the guy has no idea who he is that he reaffirms his loyalty to the New Jersey crew, and he does so by murdering one of his mother's oldest friends to steal her life savings and give Tony a big fat envelope. Which highlights another defining aspect of Paulie's character, that before anything else, he's a survivor. This finally comes to a head in season 6 when Tony and Paulie have to go on the run while a body the two of them are connected with is excavated by the FBI. Alone together for days on end, Tony comes face to face with just how big of a mouth his friend has, recalling old suspicions and considering all the ways in which Paulie is a liability to him. There eventually comes a moment where Tony finds out they're in the clear. The murder they were worried about is being pinned on Jackie Aprile, but he hears Paulie's iconic laugh coming through the walls in this piercing, grating way, and I think he decides right then and there to kill him while they're alone together away from Jersey.
What we ought to do? We ought to treat ourselves before we leave. Just thinking maybe we do some sport fishing.
You serious?
Yeah, what are you kidding? The fucking marlin they got out here? We'll rent a boat.
Yeah, sure.
Paulie looks far from enthused at the suggestion, and then when they're pulling away from the pier, he sees flashes of the time they killed Pussy together on a different boat, and you can tell by his face he's wondering if maybe he fucked up getting aboard.
Was you told him, right? It's no big deal. I could hardly resist. Very funny, Tone. I don't know. Yeah, he was a funny prick, that Ralph. Come on, you told John about that joke, right?
It wasn't me, Tom. No? That's right.
Tony presses him multiple times with his suspicions, and Paulie holds up, which I think is what makes Tony change his mind about killing him.
Think fast. Jesus, Tom, fuck, that hurt!
The damage was done, though. Paulie definitely picked up on Tony's animosity.
When my time comes, tell me. Will I stand up?
Now, in the context of the episode, this is most likely referring to Tony's concerns that Paulie would sell him out to New York or the federal government. But remember Pussy's last words in that scene Paulie was remembering?
I gotta sit down. I feel like I can't stand.
Just like Tony, Paulie's subconscious is trying to warn him of an impending threat, but unlike Tony, he was going to listen. I think this is foreshadowed in From Where to Eternity, where Chris has a near-death experience and brings a message for Paulie and Tony back from the other side.
I saw the tunnel and a white light. I saw my father in hell.
Get the fuck out of here.
And the bouncer said that I'd be there too when my time comes. Mikey Palmisi and Brendan Fallone were there too. They were friends. And then Mikey gave me a message for both of you.
A message?
Yeah. Yeah, he said, tell Tony and Paulie 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock?
This fucking morphine drip, I don't think it's working. I don't feel a fucking thing.
You gotta be careful with that.
That was all he said?
Oh.
Mikey, 3 o'clock?
Yeah.
What was he wearing?
Come on, let's go.
Here again, we see Tony dismissing a warning that Paulie takes seriously. There actually are supernatural elements to The Sopranos. People forget about it because it's usually pretty subtle, like the moving wine glass in Calling All Cars, or when we get a glimpse of Pussy's ghost in the mirror after Livia's wake. Oh, by the way, the angle that Mog would be approaching Tony from in Made in America? 3 o'clock. Season 6 gets really esoteric and into this idea of everything in life being an interconnected, continual process.
Think of the two boxes as ocean waves or currents of air, 2 tornadoes, say. They appear to be 2 things, right? 2 separate things, but they're not. The tornadoes is just wind. The wind stirred up in different directions. The fact is, nothing is separate. Everything is connected.
Everything is everything.
Symmetry is very important, this idea of life being a circle, both closed and eternal. The shot of Tony dying on the floor at the end of the Season 6 opening, for example, mirrors that of him waking up at the beginning of the finale. And in particular, there are a lot of parallels being drawn between Tony and rival boss Phil Leotardo. Tony and Phil both suffer near-death experiences and both temporarily commit themselves to living a better life before ultimately falling back into old patterns of behavior.
From now on, every day is a gift. What I've been through, it changes the way you think. And holding my grandkids, your kids, in my lap, all of a sudden it's very important to me.
Tony's desire to have grandchildren is interesting because there's definitely something going on with Meadow in those last few episodes.
Meds come in separately. She had to go to the doctor. Switch birth control.
All throughout the series, Meadow has been Tony's guardian angel. Her voice is what calls him back when he almost dies after being shot by Junior, and the Season 6 intro calls her
Cool, the guardian angel. He, she, or it is third man out.
Earlier in the final season, Tony gambles the money he was supposed to give to Vito's widow on a horse called Meadow Gold, which narrowly loses its race. This is foreshadowing the final episode where Meadow comes in just too late to save Tony a second time. If she had been able to park a little faster, she'd be sitting here, blocking Mog's shot at Tony, not unlike when Chrissy blocked Junior's hitters in the first season. No such reprieve this time though, Meadow Gold came in too late again.
I can't hear it.
The idea that she may have been coming to tell Tony he was about to be a grandfather only makes it more tragic. But as much as Meadow's pregnancy would have pleased Tony, imagine how it must have terrified Patsy. He's already lost a brother to the Soprano family infighting, after which, remember, Tony implicitly threatened his remaining family.
You got a younger son, too, right? You ought to bring him up to the house. You can hang out with AJ. You can get something to eat. They can go in the pool.
Now his son may have gotten Meadow pregnant not too long before this happens, not to mention Patsy's younger son and AJ are both friends with Jason Gervasi, whose arrest Tony now believes caused his father to turn state's evidence.
Speaking of jokers, where's that other son of yours today?
I didn't think he was invited.
I just thought with all the wedding talk, you know?
No, really. That pal of his, the other Jason. But he ran into some trouble. Carlos Jason.
He's a mess.
All right.
Well, he's got no shortage of lawyers here.
This gets brought up when the families have brunch to discuss Meadow and Patrick's futures, which seems to really frighten the mother as she's clearly trying to communicate something to Patsy, who, by contrast, seems cool as a cucumber. Almost excited, as if he's already come to a decision and is now just playing out his part. The Blue Comet opens with Silvio killing a member of Tony's crew who'd approached him with a plan to have Tony killed and restore normal relations with New York.
Bert wasn't speaking for just himself. Guys are getting squeezed hard to sway them towards new management.
And later in that same episode, we come in on Paulie and Patsy in the Bing, supposedly arranging the hit on Phil Leotardo.
It'll be fine.
Paulie, those guys are outside.
Fuck you talking so loud for? Don't discuss this until we're in the piece of dough.
Now, it's strange Paulie would react this way if they were just talking about Phil. It's not like wiretaps would stop at the bathroom door. And I don't see why Paulie would feel the need to reassure Patsy if they were just arming Phil's hitters. I think they were arranging Tony's hit, with the plan being for Patsy to replace him with Paulie's support.
It's all yours.
After Phil is dead, we once again have this sense that things are wrapping up just a little too soon. Tony offers Paulie leadership of Ralph's old crew, which he initially declines. Then, when Tony says he'll give it to Patsy instead, Paulie changes his mind. Now, watch Paulie's face, especially after Tony says the thing about giving the job to Patsy.
Hey, you don't want the job, you don't want the job. I can put Patsy in there. She's gonna be part of my family now. Be good. Trick.
You always know what to say to me, don't you?
I'm serious.
I live but to serve you, my liege.
Paulie panics and intercepts the offer because if Tony wants to put Patsy in charge of one of the family's most reliable sources of income, he's obviously not planning on having him or any of his family killed. This being the case, Patsy might back out of their arrangement. So Paulie takes the job, Tony leaves, and then this cat walks up and stares at him. Earlier in the episode, Paulie was freaked out by the cat staring at pictures of Chris, and Tony said it was marking a dead rat in the wall. Here, it's marking Paulie as the rat, the traitor. And that's it! Tony leaves to meet his fate, Syl is gone, Puss is gone, Chris is gone, Bobby is gone, but here Paulie remains, ever the survivor. I'd like to believe life got better for Tony's family, his real family, after he was gone, but I think a lot of the damage has been done. AJ is pretty much turned into his father by the end of the series, gleefully participating in acts of violence with the children of other gangsters, then crying about it to a therapist. The last we see him before the Soprano family's Last Supper, he's working as a producer for a mobbed-up porn company, driving a gas-guzzling car his parents bought him to pick his underage girlfriend up from high school.
We have to break our dependence on foreign oil.
Well, that's the cool part. 23 highway. It's not so bad.
In Meadow? God, what was it Tony said?
Watching an angel fool.
She bails on a career as a public defender or a child's doctor to become a white-collar criminal at a corporate firm, settling down with another mobster's child who's also learned to rationalize his father's lifestyle and carry the skills he's picked up into a career of more legalized theft and coercion.
You know what really turned me? Seeing the way Italians are treated. It's like Mom says. If I hadn't seen you dragged away all those times by the FBI, then I'd probably be a boring suburban doctor.
I think things might be okay for Carmela, though. Tony set her up with that trust, and him being killed before the indictments come down means she won't wind up like Ginny Sack, having her property seized by the FBI or liquidated to pay for legal bills. Both of her children are grown now, and Angie eventually thrived without her husband, so maybe Carmela will too. Maybe she finally takes that trip to Italy with Ro like they always talked about, tracks down Furio, and the two of them settle down somewhere in the Italian countryside. Anyway, $4 a pound.